For decades, people were sold a ceremonial formula. Work for 40 years. Save 10 to 15% of your income. Place it inside an institutional retirement wrapper. Wait patiently until 65. Then withdraw a small percentage every year and call it freedom. Clean, respectable, familiar, and obsolete. That formula was not handed down from physics. It was a peace agreement between corporations, asset managers, and workers in a different economic century. Back when housing costs had not detached from wages. Back when healthcare had not become a private taxation system. Back when pension logic had not been dumped onto individuals. Back when capital markets had not become the primary oxygen supply for governments, institutions, and retirees all at once. The old retirement promise assumed a stable world. Stable inflation, stable lifespans, stable market access, stable medical costs, stable purchasing power, stable rules. You do not live in that world. You live in a dynamic, highly extractive macroeconomic environment where every static rule of thumb becomes a future liability. Traditional retirement math is built on delayed obedience. It takes your most liquid years, your most energetic decades, and converts them into locked, institutionally managed capital that you cannot easily touch, cannot fully control, and often do not truly understand. Then it asks you to trust that the same system inflating your expenses, compressing your purchasing power, and monetizing your labor will also preserve your dignity at the finish line. It will not. Not because the system hates you, not because it is immoral, because it is arithmetic. And arithmetic has no empathy. By the end of this video, you will know exactly why the math you're counting on is legally rigged to run out, and the precise cold-blooded adjustments you must make to protect your timeline. The first crack in the retirement myth is the most polite one, the famous 4% rule. The idea is simple enough to fit into a coffee mug. Build a portfolio. Retire. Withdraw 4% in the first year. Adjust that dollar amount for inflation every year after that. And historically, under certain market conditions, your money might last about 30 years. Might. Not will. Not must. Not guaranteed. Might. That small word carries the entire weight of the problem, because the 4% rule was never designed as a sacred commandment. It was a retrospective observation based on historical U.S. market data, specific bond yields, specific valuation regimes, and a specific retirement horizon. It was a rule of thumb. The public turned it into scripture. Now watch what happens when scripture meets modern arithmetic. Take a clean, round example. A retiree has $1 million. The classic logic says they can withdraw 4% in year one. That is $40,000. Sounds respectable until you remove the mythology from the number. $40,000 is not $40,000 of life. It is $40,000 before the world starts taking its cut. Taxes, healthcare premiums, out-of-pocket medical expansion, property tax if they own, insurance repricing, food inflation, service inflation, energy volatility, longevity risk, adult children boomeranging into the household economy, everything the brochure does not print. And then there is inflation, not the domesticated version of inflation presented in sanitized annual averages. The lived version. The version where insurance rises faster than headline CPI. Healthcare rises faster than headline CPI. Housing-related costs rise faster than headline CPI. Quality of life goods quietly shrink, degrade, or get rebundled into higher recurring service costs. The version where your dollars buy a lower tier of reality each year, even when official measurement says the damage is manageable. A $1 million nest egg looks static on a statement. In real life, it is a melting ice cube. Now let's do the part retirement marketing avoids. If inflation averages 3% for 30 years, $1 million of purchasing power collapses to roughly $412,000 in today's terms. If inflation averages 4%, that same purchasing power falls closer to $308,000. That is not a small haircut. That is structural erosion. And remember, retirees do not merely hold cash. They spend it while the currency weakens, so the actual damage compounds in both directions. Your portfolio is trying to survive market volatility. Your withdrawals are draining principal. Your living costs are rising. And the denominator, the currency itself, is being steadily diluted. This is where the 4% rule becomes vulnerable in a way most people never model emotionally: sequence risk. If your first years of retirement coincide with weak market returns, the rule does not gently wobble. It becomes mathematically fragile. Imagine you retire with $1 million. The market falls 20%. Now you have $800,000. If you still withdraw $40,000, you are no longer taking 4%. You are taking 5%. If inflation pushes that withdrawal to $41,000 or $42,000 next year, while the portfolio is still impaired, the safe rule quietly stops being safe. That is how retirements fail. Not in one dramatic explosion, in a series of reasonable-looking decisions made inside a structurally weakened system. And the deeper problem is this: traditional retirement math assumes your later life can be defended with a static percentage. But life is not static. Healthcare is not static. Longevity is not static. Policy is not static. Currency is not static. Asset valuations are not static. Only the retiree is expected to be static, disciplined, measured, calm, predictable. Withdraw a little. Hope the sequence behaves. This is not sovereignty. This is managed dependency. $1 million used to sound like escape. In many major metros today, it sounds more like a delayed negotiation with decline. If your retirement model depends on the world becoming cheaper, calmer, or more honest when you stop working, then your retirement model is fantasy. The 4% rule is not evil. It is simply insufficiently brutal for the world you actually live in. It was built for a retirement era that assumed markets would cooperate, inflation would remain tame, medicine would remain manageable, and lifespan would not become an expensive extension problem. That era is gone. The second floor of the trap is not about returns. It is about custody. Traditional retirement systems are marketed as gifts: tax-deferred growth, employer match, long-term discipline, a responsible container for your future. And yes, those features are real. But so is the containment logic underneath them. When you place a significant share of your productive capital inside a 401k or IRA structure, you are not simply saving. You are agreeing to a timeline, a penalty regime, a restricted access architecture, a rulebook written by institutions and revised by lawmakers you do not control. That is the part mainstream advice frames as discipline. In practice, it is behavioral containment. The worker becomes easy to model. Contribute every paycheck. Stay invested. Do not touch it. Wait decades. Accept volatility. Accept limited menu choices. Accept plan fees. Accept fund fees. Accept administrative spread. Accept policy changes later. This is very convenient. Not primarily for you. For the institutions sitting underneath the wrapper, asset managers do not need to guess whether money will arrive. Payroll systems deliver it automatically. Employers normalize it culturally. Financial media moralizes it socially. And penalties keep most people from exiting early, even when the capital would be more useful elsewhere in life. Your future gets framed as a sacred vault. Their business gets a predictable river of assets. That river is extraordinarily valuable because captive assets are cheaper to manage than unstable assets, easier to forecast, easier to wrap in products, easier to fee, easier to sit on for decades while you carry the emotional volatility. Now, We get to the hidden theft most people underestimate because the percentage looks small. Fees. A 1% fee sounds like background dust. A 1.5% fee sounds survivable. But fees are not additive. They are compound extraction. A fee does not merely cost you 1% this year. It removes capital that would have compounded for the rest of the timeline. That makes it structurally predatory, even when it is legally disclosed. Let's run brutal, simple math. Imagine a retirement account starts with $250,000 and compounds for 30 years at 8% before fees. No extra drama, no fantasy returns, just clean long-term compounding. At 8% gross, that $250,000 becomes roughly $2,500,000. Now, subtract a 1% annual fee. The net return becomes 7%. The ending value falls to roughly $1,900,000. The difference is about $600,000, not spent on your life, not consumed by your bad behavior, transferred. Now increase the fee drag to 1.5%. The net return becomes about 6.5%. After 30 years, the portfolio lands closer to $1,660,000. Now the gap from the no-fee baseline is around $860,000. That is the cost of a small fee, and that example is almost too polite. Because many people add contributions along the way, which means more capital sits underneath the fee drag over time, which means the extraction can easily cross well into the 7 figures over a lifetime. This is why the phrase just 1% is so dangerous. 1% of assets under management is not a harmless service charge. It is an ownership transfer, especially when the institution collects it, whether markets rise, fall, or spend 5 years moving nowhere. Notice the asymmetry. You absorb the market risk. You absorb the sequence risk. You absorb the inflation risk. You absorb the behavioral risk. You absorb the policy risk. The institution absorbs recurring fee revenue. That is not a partnership. That is toll collection. And the lock runs deeper than fees. Because locked accounts also distort your life decisions. A younger person may need capital for mobility, for business formation, for location change, for real estate control, for buying back time, for surviving a career transition without panic. But the retirement wrapper tells them, no. Wait. Wait until your most energetic decades are gone. Wait until your body is less durable. Wait until your optionality is lower. Wait until the institution approves the timeline. This is what makes traditional retirement planning psychologically elegant and economically clumsy. It converts living capital into delayed permission. Now, to be clinically fair, tax-advantaged accounts can absolutely be useful tools. That is not the issue. The issue is when the wrapper becomes the philosophy, when max the account becomes the substitute for structural thinking, when a person confuses tax deferral with financial sovereignty. Because the wrapper does not remove reality, it just changes the timing of when reality bills you. At some point, the account must be accessed. At some point, taxes matter. At some point, required distributions matter. At some point, healthcare costs matter. At some point, market valuations at retirement matter. And through the entire process, the institutions have already been paid. If the first 2 floors expose the trap, the 3rd floor reveals the exit. And the exit is not a bigger number inside the same mental model. It is a velocity shift. Traditional retirement culture trains people to behave like passive savers. Earn, contribute, wait, hope, age, withdraw. That is not a sovereign model. That is a deferred dependency model. The saver worships accumulation. The allocator studies control. That distinction changes everything. True financial sovereignty is not an arbitrary 7-figure balance arriving when your joints ache, your risk appetite has collapsed, and your life is being negotiated through the lens of medical probability. True sovereignty is structural. It means your capital is not only growing, it is positioned, accessible when needed, protected from unnecessary fee drag, distributed across tax regimes intelligently, capable of producing cash flow before some ceremonial retirement age, capable of surviving inflation not by pleading with it, but by sitting in assets with pricing power, contractual yield, productive output, or strategic leverage. That is the entire game, not retirement. Control. Here is where most people remain too soft in their thinking. They ask, how much should I save? A harder question is, what is the velocity of my capital? How many ways can $1 work? Can it remain accessible? Can it compound? Can it throw off cash flow? Can it sit behind productive assets? Can it be deployed into opportunity when the cycle breaks? Can it reduce my dependence on forced labor before age 65? The informed allocator does not reject tax-advantaged accounts entirely. They simply refuse to build their whole future inside a lockbox. They think in layers, a liquidity layer for resilience and opportunity, a taxable investment layer for accessible compounding and tactical flexibility, a cash flow layer tied to productive assets, business equity, debt instruments, or ownership structures that can pay in real time rather than in ceremonial old age. A retirement layer for tax efficiency, yes, but kept in proportion rather than treated like a religion. And then comes the part mainstream advisors rarely explain with enough honesty: debt. Not consumer debt, not status debt, not car debt masquerading as identity, strategic debt. Long duration, fixed rate obligations attached to productive or inflation-resistant assets can function as sovereign debt wrappers. Why? Because inflation punishes savers holding idle currency more than it punishes holders of properly structured, fixed-rate liabilities attached to productive ownership. That is not magic, it is balance sheet physics. If your asset base compounds, produces income, or reprices upward while your debt remains nominally fixed, time begins working in your favor instead of exclusively in the institutions. The point is not to become reckless. The point is to stop pretending that the only safe strategy is to drip money into a managed box and wait for permission to live. Sovereignty also means positioning ahead of macro cycles rather than being passively processed by them. When rates rise, what breaks? When credit tightens, who gets forced to sell? When inflation persists, which assets retain pricing power? When labor markets weaken, how much of your life depends on a paycheck continuing uninterrupted? These are retirement questions, just not the version printed in glossy brochures. A sovereign capital machine is built long before traditional retirement age. It is built by reducing institutional tolls, increasing ownership, protecting optionality, and engineering streams of capital that do not all die if one employer disappears. A person with $3 million locked, overfeed, and sequence risked inside a fragile retirement model can be less sovereign than a person with lower nominal net worth but higher cash flow control, lower institutional drag, better debt structure, and more accessible capital. That is the shift, from admiration of balances to mastery of architecture. And once you see retirement this way, the entire emotional language changes. You stop asking whether you are on track. On track to what? To becoming an older employee of your own shrinking portfolio? A more intelligent question is whether your structure is reducing dependence now. Can your assets buy back 1 day a week? Then 1 month a year? Then the ability to say no to bad income? Then the ability to choose your geography? Then the ability to survive without liquidating the future at exactly the wrong moment? That is retirement worth respecting. Not a date. A progressively widening zone of coercion. This is the cold-blooded adjustment the old math never taught you. Do not simply accumulate. Engineer. Do not merely defer taxes. Control velocity. Do not worship retirement accounts. Use them selectively. Do not wait for 65 to discover whether your system works. Force the system to produce optionality earlier. Because if your plan only functions at the very end of life, then it was not a wealth strategy. It was a compliance strategy. This is the part people resist because it sounds too hard. The macroeconomic system is not against you in a personal sense. It does not wake up angry. It does not carry moral bias. It does not reward virtue. It does not punish laziness with poetic symmetry. It simply responds to structure, to arithmetic, to leverage, to fee flow, to tax exposure, to liquidity timing, to who controls the capital and who merely supplies it. If you approach retirement emotionally, with slogans, defaults, rules of thumb, and soft trust in institutional packaging, then you will be processed exactly the way the system was designed to process you. You will become a line item, a predictable contributor, a passive asset source, a late life withdrawal profile, and all the while, other balance sheets will be feeding on the friction you were told was normal. That is why the issue is not whether traditional retirement accounts are evil. The issue is whether your philosophy is passive, whether you are building around access, control, cash flow, and optionality, or whether you are paying decades of institutional tolls to hopefully arrive at a number large enough to negotiate with inflation when you are older, slower, and more vulnerable. That is not a plan. That is outsourced hope. So look at your current trajectory honestly. Not sentimentally, not politically, structurally. Are you building a sovereign capital machine? Or are you paying an institutional toll to fund someone else's skyscraper? Drop your exact retirement philosophy in the comments below. And if this video helped you see the machinery more clearly, subscribe, turn on notifications, and stop letting the system run your math for you. Because the machine will keep moving whether you understand it or not. The only real question is whether you will remain inside it as raw material or learn to operate above it.